Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ageless Rock, a channel for megalithic fans with megalithic lens to see megalithic sites from a megalithic perspective. Today, we are going to travel to North Pacific Ocean to visit a mysterious site in Pohnpei Island state, which is part of the Federated States of Micronesia. Here, you can find Temwen Island with one of the greatest megalithic construction at Nan Madol. I remain amazed and skeptical at the same time because there is no rock-solid explanation where oceanic dwellers would move unbelievable amount of rocks from island to island or within the island. Archaeologists say the carbon dating shows that it was a product of hard-working Pohnpeians in the 8th century. When I first came to know about this around 2017, the information readily available is not as easy to get as today. I was just at the beginning of my newly found interest. The tiny Temwen Island of the already tiny Pohnpei state has a city of Titanic proportion, but no one seems to have heard about it. Today, there are a lot more information available and still no one is able to tell us exactly when and what happened at Temwen Island without any assumptions attached at the end of the sentence. It is such a colossal undertaking that it earned the name as the Eighth Wonders of the World. The city is approximately 1.5 kilometers long and 500 meters wide. That is about 750,000 square meters of land area, or more accurately when measured, 83 hectares according to scientific papers. This artificially reclaimed land of lagoon has 92 artificial islands built on top of coral reef. This is the only ancient city in the world that was built on coral reef. But the most puzzling part of the construction is the material used. It is just stacking of basalt columns. It is an engineering marvel and mystery at the same time. The basalt column is not local and no one knows where it came from. According to mainstream, the construction took more than a millennium. It makes sense that it took a very long time to build since they were Stone Age people at the time of construction. But that also raises another question. How can a civilization do something over and over for 1,000 years, left no trace at all? Basalt columns can be found naturally from bedrock, but that would mean it has been transported or floated on wooden raft across the ocean from another location. It has been experimented and failed with just a 1-ton basalt column. So the idea it was transported by raft is going to sink the argument. When the Europeans arrived, they only have myths and legends to tell. A philologist by the name Horatio Hale asked Pohnpeians who constructed Nan Madol, and they replied Hani or Animan in their local language, which means ghosts or spirits. However, this was interpreted as ancestral spirits and thus concluded that it was built by ancestors of the 19th century. This is a good example of how arts in archaeology consistently clashes with science in construction engineering. Archaeologists believe that this site was occupied as early as 1st century AD and construction could have started as early as 8th century and peaked at around 12th century. Delio was its ancient name, and Sao Delio simply means ruler of Delio. On this historical timeline, Sao Delio gets the credit for its construction and is said to be their capital. But then, even the Sao Delio dynasty has legends that say it was built by foreigners. According to the locals, their history started with Kawa or Aramas era, where people started to populate the island. Then, the legendary two sorcerer brothers from another island started the Saudelia dynasty. The Saudelia dynasty ended with a demigod, Isokelekel started Namwaki era. He came from a mythical island called Katao, which is probably Koshai. When the Spanish finally colonized the island in the early 19th century, they were still holding on to their myths and legends, where Nan Madol was a sacred site built by an unknown race. The history of this tiny island goes back to about 3,500 years ago. It is known as the settlement phase. Then it moved to expansion phase where the island was more populated. But there was a mysterious decline and started the early history of Pohnpei. The present history started in 1885 when the colonial powers ruled. None of these phases can explain the existence of Nan Madol. According to a legend, there were two brothers by the name Olisipa and Olosopa. They have magical powers to levitate the stones and had a dragon assistant. After Olisipa died, Olosopa became the king of Pohnpei. His descendants are the Saudalia kings and clans today. Just like all the ancient cultures and civilizations, they all have a mythical origin. If the legends were to be accepted just like the Bible, then the beginning of Saudalia will sound as mythical as Adam and Eve to a Pohnpeian. If Saudalios had magical brothers as their origin, then the kings of Pohnpei would have plenty of stories to tell. If Nan Madol was built by Pohnpeians over 1,000 years, we should only need to ask the survivors. This legendary mega project is huge. It is estimated that the structure weighs 750,000 tons of basalt. The average basalt column is 5 tons. That means approximately 150,000 columns were moved from somewhere to Nan Madol. Let's assume 80% were done during the peak period. So let's see what the construction site looked like. With 120,000 columns over 400 years, we are looking at 300 basalt columns a year brought from another island to be stacked. That will work out to be about 1 column every day with a rest day on Sunday. Can a civilization do this without leaving any knowledge other than myths and legends that speak of gods from the sky? In Northern Ireland, the famous Giant's Causeway has 40,000 naturally formed basalt. Based on my simple estimation, basalt columns at Nan Madol is 150,000. That means the entire Giant's Causeway is only enough to build 27% of Nan Madol. I cannot imagine primitive people would like to rip this off the bedrock and stack it into walls while living in a hut. The average basalt column is 5 tons, but even more mind-boggling is that some basalt columns are as heavy as 50 tons. The density of basalt is about 2.9 tons per cubic meter, so a basalt with a dimension of 2.58 meters on all sides will be about 50 tons, and a special forklift will have to be made for this job. It is believed that when Nan Madol was at the peak of its construction, the population of Pohnpei was only 25,000 inhabitants. That is ridiculously low, no matter how hard you try to justify. It is even more crazy to think that at the beginning of the construction a millennia ago, the population was only 1,000. I am certain people wearing coconut fibers, rowing flimsy outriggers, did not possess instinctively any interest in building a city made of basalt. There are many mathematical ways to assume its construction method and duration to complete the project. So if you believe 25,000 strong Pohnpeians, including women and children and the elderly and the farmers, then 2,000 tons in 375 years would resonate well with you. But I don't think there are any evidence that this population size lived nearby at Nan Madol, busy unloading stones from flimsy bamboo rafts, and the rest were just busy stacking them. Even if primitive inhabitants can do this, why build them so high? A structure as high as 7 meters or 23 feet is like a fortified wall for defense. But Pohnpeians only had tribal walls, and they still lived without wooden walls for their villages. If they want protection from typhoon, they only need to build on solid ground away from the shores rather than by the shores. To build Nan Madol, you will not only need the megalithic construction knowledge of moving megaton blocks of stones from bedrock, but also the rock melting technology. These two stones are definitely not natural formation because basalt columns here are irregular prismatic in shape. Smooth rounded blocks like this is a mysterious anomaly no one in the mainstream wants to talk about. Since the rediscovery by the Europeans, Nan Madol remains an enigmatic megalithic site with a colossal opportunity to interpret in many ways. I am very sure this mind-boggling site will blow your mind if the truth is revealed. It is to me for now an eighth wonders of Ghost City. Nan Madol is a big topic for a small island. I will share more in my next video with other unsolved mysteries. I hope you enjoyed this short presentation on Nan Madol. See you in the next video and have a wonderful day. This is Berniong signing out. Kaseleli.